Hello, this is Thomas Donald Jacobs for Paperboys on Thursdays. It is Thursday. I don't know when you're going to see this, however, because I've been having a lot of internet connection issues. So yeah, uploading might be a problem. Anyhow, I am going to give a content warning here. I don't normally do that on my vlogs, I realize. But in this particular instance, I feel like it's warranted. So I'm going to be talking about rape and sexual abuse in this vlog, almost to the exclusion of anything else. So, um, if you're not in a right frame of mind for that topic, um, and you don't feel like you can deal, or you just don't wanna, I totally understand. I don't even want to be talking about it. Um, Feel free to click away, and hopefully, I will see you again some other time. But here we go. I see that J.K. Rowling has been getting a lot of kudos lately for having funded a rape crisis center out of her own pocket in Edinburgh. And normally I would have no issue with that because those services are needed. There is no denying that. There is, in actual fact, very little support for rape and sexual abuse survivors in many areas of the world. And I know for certain in the United States, there's very little help given to victims. We just don't have good support for anything dealing with mental health in general, frankly. But rape and sexual abuse, in particular, while people act like they care sometimes, especially when it comes to trans people and drag queens. We've got all this groomer discourse, but that's all it is. It's just it's angry talk, with no actual help in actual instances of rape and sexual abuse. It's something that people talk about in order to victimize a particular minority, whether that's gay people or trans people or gender nonconforming people. But when it comes to funding the testing of rape kits, nope. When it comes to offering just physical health services to survivors in the form of, Plan B or abortions, hell no. When it comes to much needed mental health counseling, fuck you, you're on your own. You know, ordinarily, I would have no problem But because Lord Voldemort touched it, as one might expect, it's not especially well conceived in some ways. It is, of course, specifically trans exclusive, and more particularly says that it will not offer services to quote unquote people who identify as trans women. That it will instead refer them to other services. Now, thankfully, that particular city has an inclusive crisis center, and I will put the link to that below in case you should wish to make a donation to a worthy organization. I find it odd, this framing. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised considering that despite in her infamous essay, J.K. Rowling was all like, I love the trans, I support the trans, but I mean, she has since gone mask off and full blown turf. You know, tweeting Mary Turfmas because she thinks that's cute or funny or whatever. Hanging with out and out bigots. Sending her Death Eaters to attack trans content creators online. I mean, yeah, it's not. It is what it is. You know. Now, I'm sure that some bigots do support worthy organizations and charities. I don't feel that this is one of them, because it's set up in such a way as to be bigoted. And the thing is, it's probably not going to hurt the group that she and the other people involved hope. Because, as I said, there is another crisis center in that particular city. But the framing feeds into other larger problems. Which do need to be addressed, I think. So, the exclusion of trans women doesn't make sense for the reason that they've given. The idea is to provide a safe space for women but not all women. And while I kind of understand from a personal point of view as a survivor, the impulse to create a space for abuse and rape survivors that is wiener free, I'm not sure that that's an impulse that should be acted upon, uh, especially not in this way. I think that it's useful for counseling and crisis centers to say, okay, this particular group therapy session is only for this group. Or to say, we only do one on one counseling. Although I think that support groups are a good thing. But one on one counseling is also effective and useful, especially in a crisis moment. But to entirely withhold services from men is not a good thing. Considering that there are actually not that many places where male survivors can get help. One of my male relatives was also a victim of abuse. I'm not gonna give details because that's his story to tell if he wants to, and I know he don't want to. But I will say that it would have helped him immensely if there had been specific support for him as well. Especially considering that we have a culture of talking a lot about protecting boys from, you know, pedophiles and that, but we don't actually offer them a lot of support. And in many instances, especially if they were abused by a woman, we just wave it away. Oh, what a lucky boy to be with an older woman, that kind of shit. Just disgusting. Anything that feeds into the idea that there are legitimate survivors of abuse and rape and non-legitimate survivors of abuse and rape, I don't feel is good or healthy for anyone, really. So there's that. I don't think for myself personally, if I'd gone to a rape and abuse crisis or counseling service and seen would appear to be men walking around, that it would have, tipped me over the edge. I can't speak for everybody. If it was like a support group situation, I could see a center designating some support group meetings as for women only, some for men only, some saying that it's mixed, that kind of thing. But just to say, don't even come in the building, I don't know about all that. Also, I think it's weird that this center has specifically chosen to exclude trans women, but not trans men, with this idea of, you know, rape survivors don't want to be around men because, yeah. I mean, so I could go in there and there would be no problem. And how is that going to work? They're going to check to see that I'm a trans man, and then I'll just walk around with a little tag that says, "Don't be afraid, I has pussy." Like, what? How is that? How does that in their heads work? And how would that not hurt me to have to do such a thing? And to tell everybody, apparently, I guess, that, oh, it's okay, I'm trans, because I want everyone to know, especially in that kind of situation, sure. But, it's not surprising that they've done that because, and this is no, like, I'm not reading into this, this is just a fact. You can see it in their, discourse. They don't consider people like me to be men at all of any kind. We're just, long lost lesbian sisters and girls who have autism and watch too much anime, whatever. Or often, ironically, rape and sexual abuse survivors who just didn't get the right kind of help. Yeah. So I think that's a problem. It feels wrong and weird to feed any of that. Not that I think that it would actually happen, because since there is, I'm just going to say an actual crisis center in the city, transgender people who are rape and sexual abuse survivors can go there, and therefore are not going to be, I would assume, like trying to barge down the doors of, a so-called support center run by bigots, for the same reason that you don't see black people trying to get help from the Ku Klux Klan. It's supporting some harmful narratives, the way that it's framed. That trans identities aren't real identities. That men are somehow less deserving or not needing such services. There's also the matter of like how are you going to do this? One of the problems with TERFs and then the slightly less sophisticated bigots that I've noticed when it comes to trans people is that they think that they can spot a trans person just like that. And the evidence that I have seen strongly suggests that they can't. when these groups, you can visit their Facebook groups and you can, see them gabbling away on Twitter and whatnot. They fixate on people who are not transgender. Um, and they think they can spot them because they're tall or, a little hairy, as though, you know, polycystic ovarian syndrome isn't a thing. I don't know what goes on in their heads that makes them think that they can always spot the trans. But what you can see is that, like, for example, with the trans bathroom panic, mostly the people that they wind up attacking um, are cis women. And that's not even a new thing. I mean, hands up everybody who is or ever was presenting as a butch lesbian who's been told that they were in the wrong bathroom. Okay? That is not a new thing. These people are only feeding this idea. And it feeds this overall idea in society that real women have to look a certain way. Because that's what they're going by. It's just appearance, because people aren't walking around with their junk on display. It's all gender. That's how we interact with it's all gender. Um, so, is it the case that if this organization wants to exclude trans women, that they're going to wind up re-victimizing a lot of cis women? Yeah. Yeah. I think that is exactly what is going to happen. It's not trans women who show up at the door, because that's not going to happen. It's cis women who do not meet the criteria in the minds of these bigots for this is what a woman should look like. I think that's exactly what's going to happen, because we can see that happening already. I'm thinking of that stupid Giggle app. The chat app that's for women by women, which I don't necessarily know is all that problematic, except they wanted to exclude trans women, and so they and nefarious male cross-dressing psychopaths, because they think that they watch too many movies. Okay. So that the app, you take a picture and it feeds it through this algorithm, and then the algorithm says, yes, you're a real woman, or no, you're not. There were trans women who were able to get past the algorithm. But there were a lot of minority cis women who weren't. Especially black women. And you can see that shit with the transphobes just by looking at their crap on Twitter and their message boards and Reddit stuff. And they often, when they're obsessing about somebody they think is trans, it's often a black lady. Um, because, you know, racism is one of those intersectionalities. uh, Ironic considering that the mission statement for this rape crisis center talks about intersectionality, and yet you can't quite spot where the intersectionality is. um, so yeah, I think that that's kind of an issue that some survivors, whether they're cis women or not, may be made to feel unwelcome or actually told you're not welcome. Um, or you're only welcome if you can prove that you are a cis woman, or I guess in my case, a trans man, which I assume would be based on, show us your papers or pull down your pants. Um, I would hope that that wouldn't be a thing at such a place, but I mean, you got some of these people talking about doing junk checks on children just to make sure. So I don't know. But I don't think that that creates a safe space for women. I just don't. Um, and this whole thing, which again, it's appearances. How do people look? Underpins something that I think is a very harmful um, idea in white Western culture, which is that rape and sexual abuse are about sex and attraction. Um, and not about control and the dynamics of power. Um, and you can see how prevalent that idea is. I don't know if y'all remember this, because I mean he said a lot of crazy shit, but the last president waved away accusations of sexual assault by saying, "Oh, I wouldn't have done that to her. She's too ugly." And there were a lot of people who found that pretty plausible. Um, and you can't win, especially as a woman, because you either were too attractive or dressed a certain way and therefore asked for it, or you were, just too ugly and it didn't happen. Um, you can't win. And to see people who say they want to support rape and sexual abuse survivors feeding that shit in any way is honestly mind-numbingly depressing. And I mean depressing. I'm not talking about, oh, it's a little sad. No, it's depressing. At least I find it depressing. Um, is this a worthy institution, or is it an institution that is hopefully inadvertently not intentionally, um, supporting, promoting, feeding um, discourses that actively harm the survivors of rape and sexual abuse. Should we do that? Should we congratulate people who do that? Um, should we promote that as like a kind of activism for women's rights? Mm. I'm gonna say no. I know from my point of view, um, having been told by people as a teenager, including the police, on one occasion, that basically what happened to me could not have happened because I just wasn't an attractive girl. Seeing the establishment of a crisis center that is apparently going to decide um, who belongs there and who doesn't on the basis of outward appearances. Or I guess in my case, since they didn't say no trans men, paperwork and maybe a junk check. No, it's disturbing. I would not ever have gone to seek help at such a place unless I were utterly desperate. And thinking back to, 20 years ago, if I had known that such a place existed, it would have made me feel even worse about what had happened to me. Yeah. I'd even if there's another crisis center in the same city, knowing that there's one, um, that's, I guess, basically gonna be like pretty girls who look like real girls only, uh, would have made me feel like just ending it. Just ending it. Uh, I probably should have included a content warning for that, but yeah, I would have felt like that. Um, I guess I should be happy that I've lived long enough to gain some perspective, which is that even people who you think should be trying to help people and who say that they're trying to help people are sometimes just dicks. So, and that says nothing about you as a survivor of rape or sexual abuse. This is nothing. Anybody who tries to um, gaslight you in that way or delegitimize your experience on the basis of, well, you looked a certain way and therefore, that person is a genuine piece of shit. Has nothing to do with you. Nothing. In the same way that what happened to you had nothing to do with you. You can't attract that kind of thing. You can't really do anything to make it not happen. Um, It's just a thing that happens. And it has nothing to do with who you are or were or are going to be. Predators prey on anyone that they think they can get away with it. Period. That's how that happens. Period. Because it's not about how you look. It's not even about what's between your legs. Not got nothing to do with it. Nothing. So don't, it upsets me. And I'm fucking running towards 50. So, I can understand how this could be affecting other people to see this kind of thing going on. Just remember, that's not a women's thing. That's a shit person's thing. It's just shitty people doing this. It's nothing about you. And what happened to you, nothing. It says nothing about that. It's just bigots being bigots. But like I said, underpinning some stuff that really should be, taken apart and done away with. And unfortunately, possibly, sucking up resources and, talking space that they shouldn't get. That could go to things that help everyone who is a survivor, and not just a certain set of survivors, and certainly not while, potentially re-victimizing some survivors. It's just not a thing to be welcomed or celebrated. That's, just how I feel about it. Yeah, so that's some incoherent thoughts. My apologies, it probably didn't make a lot of sense, but yeah, it's upsetting and it's complicated. And I'm also a little put off by the notion that having a vagina is what caused what happened to me to happen. Because I don't think that's true at all. Or that it somehow makes me, a real I don't connect what happened to me, what was done to me, actually, with having a certain body part. Especially since one of the people who did it was also female. Like, I don't see it that way, and I don't know that it's helpful to see it that way, since it can happen to anyone. And It ain't about that. That kind of places the onus on me and says, well, you're just a natural victim. Now, the burden is on the victimizer, not on the victim. And it's not an inherent thing. Like I said, it has nothing to do with you. It's because predators look for easy targets. Nothing to do with you as a person or any body part that you have. They might say things relating to it or say that's why they did it, but that's just not true. That's them trying to push it on you. And I hate the idea of anyone feeding that bullshit, even if there are other survivors of rape or sexual abuse. That's just how I think of it. So that's going to end it there, because I know that that's really... I don't think I expressed that well, maybe. I don't know. Anyhow, again, link to Real Crisis Center below. Please donate to them if you can. And yeah, in the meantime, you know, the world's sometimes not a great place. So make good choices. Look out for each other. And love, peace, and chicken grease. Bye.